Hello and welcome back to Careers Talks Live with Max from the Young Project. And today we are talking to Mick Newell, who is the Director of Cricket at Trent Bridge Cricket Ground. And I'll just say hi, Mick.
Hi, Max. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Hopefully this should be a good session today. So we'll just kind of start with the first question of what is your job title and what does your role entail? I know I just kind of explained, or I said what your job title is, but maybe there might be more to it. I don't know.
Yeah, so the Director of Cricket, like you say, I think you've interviewed the head coach on here already. Am I right in thinking?
Yes.
So we as a club have got a head coach, Peter Moores, who looks after the professional playing staff effectively and the performance of the professional team. My job is a bit more wide-ranging now. So not only do I oversee the professional players and coaches, we also look after anything that is called performance cricket. So by performance cricket, I mean elite players. So we're looking at county age group teams for both boys and girls, which run from under 10s to under 18s. And also above that, we have a county academy, which is just for boys at the moment. And then beyond that, as I say, the professional playing staff, which numbers about 20, and a coaching staff, full-time coaching and admin staff of about 12 people. So quite a lot of full-time people under my wing, but also a lot of part-time coaches and volunteers and youngsters who are trying to make their way into cricket as potentially a profession.
Must be difficult to manage all of those people. How do you manage to, all of these people going like all the way up to you? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's good. Well, it is like, it is very much like a pyramid, like you said there. But you have good people in position. So Peter, who you've spoken to, we've got Matt Wood, who is the head of Elite Player Pathway. So basically anything that isn't pro cricket, academy and county age group squads goes into Matt, and he feeds into me. Then we have an administrator, Helen Palmer, who again feeds into me, and a head of science and medicine. So we have a sort of a tiered system where there's 4 direct people, I think, who report into me, and then people that report into them. So that's how we kind of manage it. And, you're very reliant on having good people working for you, and you trust those people to get on and do their jobs.
Perfect. I think that's a great explanation there. So I guess my next question that I'm interested in, because everyone is gets into their job in different ways. How did you get to where you are today? Like, what was your kind of route?
So I played county cricket for about 7 or 8 years for Notts back in the 1980s into the 90s. And then I became a second team coach, which is like the reserve team. So I was the reserve team coach for about 11 or 12 years. Then I was first team coach, got promoted to first team coach, which I did for 14 years. And in the last 2 or 3 years of being first team coach, that was kind of combined with being a director of cricket. So I was doing a lot of off the field administration, negotiation, part of the senior management of the club, and trying to be the head coach. And I think it got to a stage where it was just impossible in a club of Nottinghamshire size to do both of those jobs. So we split them. We now have a head coach, Peter Moores, as I said, who is separate to a director of cricket. So for a few years, I tried to do both, and then eventually it got to the stage where it was not practical to be sort of wearing a tracksuit and throwing balls in the nets and getting cricketers ready to play, and then at the same time wearing a suit off the field and working more closely with the senior management of the club. So we split those jobs in 2016, and that's where we still are now.
Is that like quite a common job then for like cricket clubs and sports clubs to have? Because I guess it's kind of, you've obviously kind of reached that point where you wanted that progress and you couldn't balance it all out. But I don't know whether that's like a common thing or whether that's just something that you kind of evolved into.
No, so of the 18 county cricket clubs, I would say about 9 have got a director of cricket, maybe more than that now. Probably maybe more like 10 or 12 have got a director of cricket and a head coach. And some counties have just got a head coach. They might have more administrative support off the field. For example, our administrator is part-time. Maybe if you've got a full-time administrator, maybe if you've got another academy director as well as a pathway director, you might have more people in different roles. But at the moment, we just felt that this was the way that a big club like Notts has decided to go. And if you look at the other big county cricket clubs, by which I mean Yorkshire, Lancashire, Surrey, Warwickshire, Middlesex, where England play their matches for the most part, when you can have a crowd anyway. Those clubs have gone the same way in splitting those two jobs. So I would have said it was about 66% now, Max, that have both of those jobs in place.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So obviously, with your kind of role, it's quite, well, it's very sport focused, and you've got a clear pathway down there. It's not like your conventional go to university, go to school, and then get into an office 9-to-5 job or whatever. So what sort of qualifications do you have? Because I think that's again an important thing to question, because people are worried about what qualifications they actually need for particular lines of work.
I mean, that's a good question. So when I was 18, I did my A-levels, and then I left school at that point. Now, I did have a place at university, but I wanted to be a professional sportsman. So I came straight out of school into professional sport. So I count myself very lucky, because I often say I've never had a real job, because basically everything I've done has been involved with my hobby, which was cricket from an early age. So in terms of playing qualifications, you just have to be a good player, or a good enough player anyway, to make a living out of the game. But one of the most important things that I did, and I would, strongly recommend, is I got all of my coaching badges by the time I was 23. So I was still playing. By the time I was as fully qualified as I could be, I was still playing the game. So I'd sort of looked ahead as to what might happen if I finished early, or if I'd have played till I was 35. As it was, I only played really seriously in the first 11 till I was about 26. Mm-hmm. But by that time, I was fully qualified as a coach. So when coaching opportunities, coaching jobs came up, even though I was quite young, I had all the badges I could have to get a job in the field of, off the field, or as a coach rather than as a player. So that they were my qualifications, or they are my qualifications. Since then, cricket coaching has evolved again a little bit more, and I've taken some more qualifications, but I don't have any management really qualifications particularly. It's just about coaching and playing and being around the game for a long time. And
so for those people who maybe don't know about the kind of routes into coaching and stuff, how easy is it to get into coaching in the first place? Like, do you need to have a particular experience, or like, how much does it cost? I don't know. What are the kind of barriers, and how do you get into that in the first place?
It doesn't cost a huge amount. I think in most sports, if you're looking, you take rugby or football or tennis or hockey, whatever, if you were trying to get your first coaching badges, I don't think they're expensive, and I think they're quite easy to get into. In our case, you would apply through the county cricket club, would guide you into coaching. If it was football or rugby, you perhaps go to your local football association or your local rugby association, or I suspect with tennis, your local tennis club even will be able to put you in touch with the right people. And initially, it's not expensive at all to get those first badges, when you might be just learning how to look after younger kids, or players of quite a young age. So it's it's organised, but a lot of it is just gameplay and introduction to sport. So it's quite an easy way to get into. Like most things, the higher up you go in terms of getting more qualified, more badges, things do start to get more expensive. You might go on residential courses. You certainly would be expected to produce more written work and things like that. But I think that initial taster for coaching for 17, 18, 19-year-olds is not that difficult to get into. And that, I'm only talking about sport. I would suspect it would be similar in drama or dance or theatre or whatever, those sort of different areas. And I think the key thing for me was I always managed to make my hobby my job. And if people have got a passion for whatever that might be, and they can turn that into a way of making a living, then it just feels like a much better way of making a living than doing a job that you don't enjoy.
Absolutely. I think that's the key bit of advice that have come out of most of these, to be fair. Like, do what you enjoy, and then, the money kind of comes second. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying you can sit and watch Netflix all day and get paid for it, but I'm sure there is an opportunity out there somewhere where you can do that.
That's one benefit of lockdown. I've signed up to Netflix, Max. I've never been on Netflix before.
So, I mean, we did kind of cover this already, and you kind of said about how you were planning for the future and getting your coaching qualifications and stuff as well. But I mean, do you have any advice or tips on how other people can maximize their chances of getting into a similar kind of profession to yours, additional to what you said, or would you say that was like the main kind of advice and tips?
Well, when you're a young cricketer, for example, you tend to just think about playing cricket, and you know, a young sportsman. I think if you can have a little bit of vision to think ahead, because sport in particular is quite a short career. So if I'd have got into cricket at 19, as I did, the longest I could have played probably was 20 years at best. And cricket, 20 years of cricket isn't going to set you up for life. So you're going to have to find jobs after cricket. So I think if you can not be 100% focused on your current job or your current passion, which for me was playing cricket, and just have enough time to think about, what am I doing to plan ahead for the future? I don't want to be too narrow in my thought process that all I know is playing cricket, because I'm not offering much to an employer in the future if all I know is how to bat and bowl. You know, that's not going to benefit an employer very much if they've got other skills that they're looking for. So it is about dabbling in other things. I did a little bit of football writing, football reporting at Notts County for a journalist agency. I did a little bit of radio reporting. Things like that. So if you've got little bits of outside interest that just give you something for your CV, as I say, other than I can bat quite well or I can bowl quite fast, that's not really going to be enough to see you through life. Yeah,
that is very true. And this might be an interesting question, because, and I don't know whether you'll be able to answer or not, but we'll see. So because you said you were very focused on cricket and becoming a professional sports person, but obviously even the further that we go on, the more difficult it is to turn that kind of hobby into a profession. And so many young people have an aspiration to be a professional sports person in whatever sport that may be. And some of them don't have a backup plan. Did you have a backup plan if it didn't work out, and what was that? And, you know, how did you come up with that?
Yeah, I had a reluctant backup plan. You know, when I was 18, you know, I had a university place that I didn't really want to take. But I went through the motions of it for my mum and dad, knowing that really I wanted to be a professional cricketer. So my backup plan was a little bit loose. But with cricket, you know, it's a 6-7 month season. So there was opportunity in the winter to get some other things in place. So like I said, you know, I did start an open university course at one point, which I did most of. I did some radio reporting, some football writing. I was able to travel abroad and play cricket in the winter, which was a great opportunity. And the main thing, as I say, was get all those coaching badges, get myself as well qualified by 23 as I could possibly be. So I was kind of thinking ahead from 18 onwards, always thinking I want to be involved in cricket if I can be. And I knew I wasn't a fantastic player, so I knew I wasn't going to play for England. So I was trying to make those opportunities that if cricket had finished with me at 23, 24, I might have been able to go off into a school job or a club, a small club, and be a cricket coach or whatever it might be. So I was thinking ahead a little bit, and I was trying to future-proof myself if I wasn't a good enough player to stay as a player for 20 years, as I'd originally hoped.
Awesome, yeah. So, I mean, I would say, one of my questions that I normally ask is, like, what extent would you recommend the route that you took? But to be fair, I'm not sure how many routes that there actually are to get to where you are, apart from the route that you did, because it's not the sort of thing that you can just kind of apply for without having quite a lot of experience beforehand, is it?
No, it's a good point. I mean, as I say, there are about 10 or 12 directors of cricket in the country at county clubs. One of them didn't play first class cricket, you know, county cricket. Well, he was an ex-Royal Marine who came into the game as a fitness coach. So there's one guy who's got a different route into the job. But the rest of us really are county cricketers who've then become coaches, who've then got too old to coach or too fat to coach, or, you know, didn't want to coach anymore and moved in that way. So that's kind of how most of us have come down that road. I think, you know, it's not for everybody. Some people like to be out on the field and be coaching and be hands-on with the players, if you like, working all the time. But for the most part, you're right. It's an experience within cricket that allows you to have the opportunity to become a director of cricket at some point. Absolutely.
And so, because obviously I think we've covered quite a lot in your job role, what does like a typical day look like for you?
Okay, so I mean, basically, a typical day it depends on the time of year. But I mean, initially when I was head coach, I was totally committed to being with the first 11 all the time. Now we don't have that anymore because I don't have to be with them. So I might go to watch the first team play, and then I could go and watch the second 11 play, or I could go and watch Notts under 13s play. So there's a whole spread of teams that I'm now responsible for, and I'm covering the coaches of those teams. They report into me. I want to know who the best players are all the way down the pathway, from the first team at Notts all the way down to the under 11s. I need to know the names of all the best players. I'm involved quite a lot in the senior management of the club. So with the chief executive, the finance director, the commercial manager, we oversee the whole ground, 120 members of staff, as you know, making sure that business works well, works successfully, trying to help and contribute in other areas of the club. We have a general committee who I have to report to and produce written reports on occasion and make sure they're up to speed with everything. So generally, I'm in and around cricket every day, cricket matches, cricket coaching, cricket training. Even in a summer like this, which is completely bizarre, now we're back in training. I'm back keeping a close eye on what's going on and making sure that cricket across the county is hopefully thriving, and going forward that we continue to produce lots of players to play for Notts from within the county, but also we're aware of good players around the country and around the world that we can try and attract to play for us.
Excellent. We've got quite a good question in the chat here. It says, with regard to your management position, how hard do you find it to manage tricky personalities? It's a challenge. I think if you're going to be a tricky personality, you better be good at your job, because as soon as you're not so good at your job, you become too much of a pain. I don't know whether people will have heard of a cricketer called Kevin Peterson, who played for Notts 10, 12 years ago and then played for England quite a lot. Now, he was a very difficult player to handle. But because he was such an outstanding player, the other players gave him quite a lot of leeway in his behaviour, because they knew that he was the best player in the team. And if they wanted to win matches and win trophies, they would give a little bit of slack to that player. But if his performance level had dropped and his behaviour was poor, that's very difficult to manage. So I think, going back to the original question, you've got to treat people as individuals. It's not all the same, but you don't give a star player too much slack, which then upsets the rest of the team. But if the rest of the team understand the importance of that player, even they are willing to give that player a little bit of slack, because they know his performances will keep that team at the top of the league or winning matches or whatever it might be. So it's a good question. It's a proper challenge. Sportsmen are difficult people at times to handle. There's a lot of egos flying around. There's a lot of emotion flying around. But treat people as individuals. Try and be honest with them as often as you can. Not always easy. Yeah. I think that is a really important point there. And it's going to be the same with any job. It's not just kind of sport or cricket or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're always going to have difficult personalities to manage, and I think it's a challenge that you kind of just have to adapt to, isn't it? It's not something that you're kind of well, I mean, it is taught to some degree, but it's difficult unless you're actually in the situation, and then you have to do it there and then, because you've got to react to that situation, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. And I think we're not totally regimented. Wasn't my style of management or coaching. Going back to that question, I tried to run my team on as few rules as possible, but the rules that we had to be stuck to. So if you're going to have a lot of rules, that's going to take up a lot of time and energy making sure those rules are enforced. And then you have to question, is it worth the necessity of those rules? Are those rules making us a better team? And if I'm going to have them, am I going to enforce them? So, for example, when we might go to an away match and stay in a hotel, if we're going to have a curfew, which I never did, but if we're going to have a curfew that you have to be in the hotel at 11 o'clock, say, am I going to sit in the hotel lobby and count people in at 11 o'clock? Okay, I'm probably not. It's probably not worth good use of my time. Is it going to cause more trouble than it's worth? Yes, it is. So don't use a rule that's not enforceable. And also, the more rules you have, the more people try and break the rules. So, you keep the rules to a minimum. Keep them simple, keep them enforceable, and just try and keep your team happy and jogging along nicely. But be prepared to deal with people who step out of line, or who, if they become too much of an issue within the team, then that needs dealing with as well. So if somebody's behaviour or their language or their fitness or their attitude becomes an issue, you have to be the one that's going to step in and deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great answer, to be fair. What would you say was like the biggest factor that's helped you in your journey to get to where you are today? I think we kind of touched on it earlier, but I'm wondering if it was different to what's already been said or.
Well, look, there's a lot of luck in it, right time, right place. When I became first team coach, the previous coach was sacked because the team weren't playing very well. I was the next man in line. I got a chance. I was really keen to grab that chance. We've had some good years and some bad years when I was head coach. I think when you have a bad year, you need a plan. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to get out of this? What's the plan? And we've had 2 or 3 years where we've had to think very quickly how, what are we going to do to put last season behind us and make our team better next year? So always be planning is a good thing. And I think you have to try and think long term. But in professional sport, you also have to be able to think quite short term, because you'll be judged on results on a week-to-week basis. So you've got to be trying to win now, but at the same time plan for the future as much as you can. So there's lots of things that have kept me in a job for a long time. Max, you're right, but right time, right place at the beginning. I love of the club. I love Notts. I love the club. I want the club to succeed all the time. And it's also about being as honest as you can be with people, because sometimes you've got to say a lot of things that might hurt and upset people. I've had to sack a lot of cricketers over the past 20 odd years. And that's tough, because it's not just a job that you're sacking them from. It's their dream. It's my dream to be a cricketer, and quite often you're taking that away. So you have to be as honest as you can be with people. And you have to put the club first. What's best for the club, what's best for the team has to come at the top of your list. Yeah,
agreed. So we've got another question in the chat here. It says, after playing and coaching cricket, did you find it difficult to adjust to an admin/management role?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I think sportsmen find it difficult quite often, and it may well be the case in other areas of passion, like I say, theatre or dance or drama or singing or horse riding, whatever. If your passion is taken away from you, how do you react to life after that? Now, I've been very lucky, because even though I was coach and manager, my next job is still within cricket. So it still feels kind of the same. But sport, and cricket in particular, does have a problem with people who perhaps haven't planned ahead and then are out of cricket and, oh, crikey, what am I going to do now? So I think that's part of your planning ahead process, is so that you don't suddenly hit a problem moment or a problem year where it takes you a while. I've known some cricketers take 18 months, 2 years, even longer to find that first job outside of cricket, because they hadn't thought ahead and they haven't planned, and they couldn't coach. They didn't want to be a coach. They didn't want to be an umpire, say. So you have, again, it's part of that planning ahead process. But I've never been outside of cricket, so I'm very lucky like that. I think now I'd probably be okay, because I'm old. But if I'd have come out of cricket at 30, 32, 35, I think I would have struggled with finding things that would have stimulated me the same way that cricket has.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good answer. Hopefully that answers your question.
That's a very good question. It's a very good question. It's very relevant in sport. I only know sport, but it's very relevant that people come to the end of their sporting life, and that's what they're known as. They're known as a cricketer or a footballer. That's what they are, and they lose that status of that sport, and they don't quite know what to do with themselves. So it's a very good question.
Absolutely. It happens in all the sports, doesn't it, really? It's not just cricket as well. Like, you see all the footballers become commentators and pundits and coaches and management staff. So, what would you say was like the biggest obstacle in kind of getting to where you are today?
Well, it's the thing that was in my way when I first started coaching at a senior level was the fact that I didn't have a glittering playing career. So, a lot of the time in football, more so than in cricket, you see great players who go into management or coaching but don't make great managers or coaches, because they can't relate to, in my opinion, they can't always relate to the average player, the average coach. Now, I think I was a pretty average player. So that enables me, I think, to have quite a lot of empathy with people who aren't superstars. But at the same time, it didn't give you a good starting point with some of the people who are superstars, who think, well, who are you to tell me what to do? You weren't very good, or I'm better than you ever were. So you have that sort of position of difficulty. So being a really good player doesn't make you a really good coach. It gives you a good starting point with players because they will respect you for what you did as a player. But you're not playing anymore. You're only coaching. So how can you get your information across to a player? And I think, if you spoke to Peter a few weeks ago, Peter wasn't a fantastic cricketer. He was a county player, same as me, played for a bit longer. But the pair of us have had long careers in coaching because I think we can relate to players and we can deal with personalities. And it's not about our cricket careers. We're never going to say, well, you should have watched me play. I was brilliant. Neither of us is ever going to say that because we don't have those sort of stories to fall back on. And I actually think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a different set of skills, but the fact that you can relate to people, I think, is quite an important thing, isn't it? And can, as you say, give you a bit of an advantage above other people where they might get an ego get in the way and might not be able to get the information. So yeah, I think that's really important. And if you had to do anything again over your career, what would you change, if anything?
The only thing I would have changed, Max, I would have split those two jobs about a year earlier, I think. Okay. I think 2015, we brought Peter in to assist me while I was still head coach. And at the end of 2015, we probably, for me, it would have been better if he'd have become head coach then. And I would have disappeared off into be director of cricket. But we gave it another year where he was sort of consulting, working a certain number of days, and I was still head coach. And I was probably tired of head coach by then because I'd done it for 15 years. So the only serious thing I would have done would have been to change that a year earlier and him to become head coach in 2016 rather than 2017. And I think that would have probably benefited the team to have his energy and his enthusiasm and his freshness, as opposed to me I've been doing it a long time. 15 years as head coach is a long time. So that's the only thing really. I mean, I'm very lucky to have been a head coach for that long. I had a good grounding as an assistant, if you like, a reserve team coach. That was a good thing to do. But I think we just probably missed a trick there. If we could have swapped or split those jobs a year earlier, I think that would have benefited the team, probably benefited me. I don't know whether it benefited Pete because he was in a different stage of his career.
Yeah, good answer. So I've got one last question, and if anyone else has got any questions, by all means, put them in the chat. What would you say what's been the most important lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
Well, to some extent, don't worry about, in my playing career, don't worry about that as being a good grounding for being a good coach. Mm-hmm. I think being a good coach is about, as you just said, I think communication, management, dealing with people, getting your ideas across, having empathy, being a good communicator with people one-to-one is absolutely crucial in being a sports coach. Being able to address bigger groups is important. And I think what is also important, and this may be relevant, is managing upwards. So managing the people who manage you. So having those relationships with people above you, giving them information, talking to them, making sure they've got as much information as you think they need at times, but having those conversations upwards, as well as managing the people beneath you in terms of who you control as coaches and players in my case. But it's also important that I'm dealing with the chief executive, the finance director, the chairman of the club, the people who work above me. I spend a lot of time managing that way, as well as managing the people who work and report into me.
That's an interesting perspective. I've not really thought about it like that, but I guess, it all boils down to people and how well you're able to speak to people and build those relationships and stuff, doesn't it? I guess from what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I mean, you've reminded me of something. So when I first became head coach, there were people who thought that I was a bit too soft to be head coach, that I wasn't a good enough player to be head coach, that the players wouldn't respect me because I didn't have a playing career. So I was very conscious from almost the very first day that I was head coach that I had people above me with opinions that I needed to try and influence. I needed to inform them. I needed to make sure that they knew what I was doing so that I could change that opinion of me. Because, the ones who were reluctant to give me the job, I needed to make sure they knew what I was doing on a regular basis. So that's what I talk about managing upwards. Make sure they're informed, make sure they're kept up to speed. and you're looking after them as well as you're looking after the people. As I say, I don't like to say managing downwards, but you know what I mean in terms of managing the people who report to you, as well as managing the people that you report to. I think that's really important to be able to manage upwards.
Definitely. So yeah, I mean that's all of the questions that I have. If anyone else has got any, then by all means put them in the chat, and we'll make sure that answer. Oh, here we go. We've got: how do you and your team prepare for international matches held at Trent Bridge?
Okay, so in terms of international matches, that's not hugely an area for me to worry too much about, but I'll talk about what we do. So when England come to play, we generally have, there's a lot of preparation that goes around the marketing, the commercial side of it. As you know, Max, it goes on at the ground. There's a big build-up to a test match or an ODI. In terms of what we do as cricket, all we have to do as cricket is provide training bowlers for the England team or on the opposition team in the sort of 3 days before the match. So we prepare them. We give them training facilities. They're obviously pretty demanding because they're international sportsmen. They expect the best facilities, the best everything. So that's my kind of role, to oversee that in the 3 days before. Look after the groundsman a little bit, who's obviously very nervous when a big match is on. It's going to be on the TV. He wants to make sure his ground's looking perfect. People aren't going to criticise him, which is, that's what TV do and radio do. They get stuck in if they're not happy. So just manage him through that, and just try and. That's when I've become part of, as I mentioned earlier, the sort of senior management of the club. It's about being part of that 4-person senior team that is responsible for Nottinghamshire when a big match is on. So it's just about making sure that the ground is looking in fantastic nick, that all the staff are really focused on delivering to 18,000 people who are coming in, making sure everybody's in the right place at the right time, we're all looking smart, all the sort of things through that game there that present Trent Bridge in the best possible light when the eyes of the world are on Trent Bridge. And obviously this year, with the lack of fixtures because of the COVID sort of situation, that's one of those things that we're going to miss. But international cricket is so important to Nottingham, so important to the club, that when it's on, I become very much part of the senior management of the team, rather than worrying too much about cricket per se. Like I might not watch a lot of the match because we're forever running around the ground, making sure that the hospitality is all in the right place, and the chefs are all happy, and the bars are all open, and everything like that. Just to make sure the ground is at its best.
Perfect. I think that's a great answer to that question, and covers everything. I think you've covered an outline of the whole match day, which is great. Thank you very much for your time, Mick. Really appreciate it. I'm going to leave links in the description for our social links, so by all means check them out. I mean, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll get back to you. But yes, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.